Federalist 14, Part 3. Favorable as this view of the subject may be, some observations remain which will place it in a light still more satisfactory. In the first place, it is to be remembered that the general government is not to be charged with the whole power of making and administrating laws. Its jurisdiction is limited to certain enumerated objects, which concern all the members of the Republic, but which are not to be attained by the separate provisions of any. The subordinate governments, which can extend their care to all those other objects which can be separately provided for, will retain their due authority and activity. Were it proposed by the plan of the Convention to abolish the governments of the particular states, its adversaries would have some ground for their objection, though it would not be difficult to show that if they were abolished, the general government would be compelled by the principle of self-preservation to reinstate them in their proper jurisdictions. He's talking about the people who say that the federal government, this Constitution, wants to get rid of the state governments. He says there is no such a thing. The power of the federal government is enumerated. It's enumerate from number. They have been written down what these powers are. Most of the power, he says, stays with the particular government. When he says particular government, he's talking about state governments. And he says even if there were no states, the federal government, in order to be able to do its job right, it would have to create states so that government will work properly. So those who say we are trying to consolidate power, in other words, concentrate power in the federal government, they're mistaken. A second observation to be made is that the immediate object of the federal Constitution is to secure the union of the 13 primitive states. Primitive means the original 13 states, which we know to be practicable, and add to them such other states as may arise in their own bosom or in their neighborhood, which we cannot doubt to be equally practicable. The arrangements that may be necessary for those angles and fractions of our territories which lie in our northwestern frontier must be left to those whom further discoveries and experience will render more equal to the task. He's talking about these blue territories here. This is the northwest frontier, and this is the other territory. He says states will be created out of these and will be added to the Union on equal footing. And then with experience, with as we go further, we'll learn more and more and create a better union. Let it be remarked in the third place that the intercourse throughout the Union will be facilitated by new improvements. Roads will everywhere be shortened and kept in better order. Accommodations for travelers will be multiplied and meliorated, and interior navigation on our eastern side will be open throughout, or nearly throughout, the whole extent of the 13 states. The communication between the western and Atlantic districts and between different parts of each will be rendered more and more easy by those numerous canals with which the beneficence of nature has intersected our country, and which art finds it so little difficult to connect and complete. He says, look, we're going to have many roads, many canals that will connect us. We will have places where people can rest while they're traveling. It is going to be much easier to travel in the future. He says things are not going to be like they are right now. There will be accommodations. It would be like hotels and places. Of course, back then they wouldn't call them hotels, but they would be places that travelers could stay, and canals will connect all those small rivers that are in the States. And this way we can transfer cargo from one side to the other much easier. So he says you've got to use your imagination. Things in the future are not going to be like they are right now. The next paragraph, a fourth and still more important consideration is that as almost every state will on one side or other be a frontier, and will thus find in a regard to its safety an inducement to make some sacrifices for the sake of the general protection. So the states which lie at the greatest distance from the heart of the Union, and which, of course, may partake least of the ordinary circulation of its benefits, will be at the same time immediately contiguous to foreign nations, and will consequently stand on particular occasion in greatest need of its strength and resources. When it says contiguous, that means they're connected, right next to each other. Like right now, these 48 states that are here, they're called contiguous United States. Remember, there's Alaska and Hawaii that are not connected to these 48 states. So he says, let's, for example, state of Georgia over here. I know this is blurry, but this is Georgia, okay? He says Georgia even sometimes may not benefit from certain things that central government does, but it will benefit a lot because it's sitting next to the places where Spanish hold, next to here where they're having problems with Native Americans. So they need to be joining the Union for their protection. And actually they do. Georgia becomes one of the first states to join the Union. So he says, keep that in mind. It may be inconvenient for Georgia or the states forming our western or northeastern borders to send their representatives to the seat of government, but they would find it more so to struggle alone against an invading enemy, or even to support alone the whole expense of those precautions which may be dictated by the neighborhood of continual danger. So Georgia would prefer to join the Union so that it will split the cost of defending itself. That's another advantage the Union does. If they should derive less benefit, therefore, from the Union in some respects than the less distant states, they will derive greater benefit from it in other respects. And thus the proper equilibrium will be maintained throughout. Part 4 will be interesting because I will read that paragraph again that I read in part 1, and I said it's very relevant to where we are, we people of the countries of the world are regarding our future. Because we share this common planet, and we have to also have a leap of faith and imagination, and like Madison says, not blindly venerate the oldest ancestors and older ancestors. we at this time in 2017, we have to also stop blindly venerating some old systems that are not good for us and think of uniting the world.